Why Cameroon's lone airline CAMAIR-CO is a failure. Hello Explorers, welcome to another informative video presented to you by The Explorer. In this video, we shall dive into one of our most treasured segments here on The Explorer, which is dissecting situations and phenomena. In this episode, we shall be looking at why Cameroon's only airways, called CAMAIR-CO, is such a big failure and disappointment to aviation industry. When it comes to aviation in Africa, air carriers such as Ethiopian Airlines, Kenyan Airways and Egypt Air are currently making the continent proud, but there are several carriers in Africa that are almost coming to extinction. It was in 1973 and the entire country, with the African continent inclusive, was over the moon, because it was the start of a new airline which added not only the airline capacity of the continent, but also a strategy for merging with the rest of the world. But fast forward a few decades down the line, the records of the airline leave less to be desired or anything good to write home about, as it is almost inexistent. In this video, we will look at the rise and fall of the Cameroon Airlines and its evolving into another version of itself, CAMAIR-CO, whose fall is also imminent, and why it is a failure as an airline. But first, if you're new here, welcome. Be sure to subscribe and turn post notifications so you don't miss any of our videos. CAMAIR-CO is currently the flag-bearer airline of Cameroon, which replaced the previous flag-bearer, the Cameroon Airlines. Saying that an airline which is still functioning can be considered by many is an overstatement, but then when we look into the management, behaviors, and other intricacies of the current airline, one will be able to tell that CAMAIR-CO is nothing but another version of the previous Cameroonian Airlines, and all that changed was just the name. But then facts needs to be put down. So let's look at how Cameroon Airline rose and fell, including management and ownership, to ascertain if the current CAMAIR-CO is headed by the same kismet or there is still hope for salvage. Cameroon Airlines was an airline from Cameroon, serving as flag carrier of the country. Based in Douala, it operated scheduled services within Africa, as well as to Europe, the Middle East, out of its hub at Douala International Airport, with a second network focus on Yaoundé-Simalène International Airport. The company was 96.43% state-owned, with the remaining shares having been held by Air France. It ceased operations in March 2008 before its role as Cameroon's flag carrier was taken over by CAMAIR-CO. The history and management of CAMAIR-CO is similar to that of the former Cameroon Airlines, which is a big red flag. Cameroon Airlines was founded in 1971 and started operating as early as 1973 in an effort to create a national Cameroon airline, as until then domestic and international flight operations at the airports in the country were mostly executed by multinational Air Afrique. Scheduled flights between Douala and Yaoundé were launched on November 1 of that year, with an initial fleet of 2 Boeing 737-200 aircraft. Shortly thereafter, international flights to Rome and Paris commenced using an ex-Air France Boeing 707, which was replaced by a larger and more modern Boeing 747-200 in 1982, which remained in service with Cameroon Airlines until 2000, when it was severely damaged in Flight 70. Over the years, Cameroon Airlines was plagued by financial difficulties, which came along with a poor safety and maintenance record. On the 16th of September 2005, the airline was indefinitely banned by the French Civil Aviation Authority from operating in its prestigious Paris route due to safety concerns that had arisen following aircraft checkups that had revealed failures to meet international norms in the loading, transport of dangerous materials, navigation, documentation, and tire maintenance. In an effort to save the airline from bankruptcy, the government of Cameroon signed an agreement with SN Air Holding, the parent company of Brussels Airlines, to ensure future funding, but these plans did not materialize. Instead, on 11 September 2006, the launch of CAMAIR-CO as new national airline was announced. Cameroon Airlines stayed operational until March 2008, though flight operations had only taken place during irregular intervals over these last years. The failure of Cameroon Airlines had been imminent, given that during the 1990s, the airline had scaled down the domestic route network in a cost-saving measure, relying on the larger sub-Saharan cities as well as some European destinations such as Belgium and others. Secondly, the fleet of aircraft operated by Cameroon Airlines from its time of inception to shutdown in 2008 is another major red flag for any airline that wishes to grow. Most of the aircraft used by the airlines were either second-handed or also operated for too long. For example, the Boeing 747-200, which was acquired second-handed in 1981, was in service right up to 2000 and only retired because of a severe damage. And most of their aircrafts like the Boeing 707-300, Boeing 737-200 and more followed the inherited and extensive usage pattern. Using aircraft like that is most definitely the aircraft setting itself up for failure and leads to the next reason the airline died, a natural death. Accidents and incidents were a common thing with this airline, as they were never short of such. From planes crashing because of severe overload to engine explosion, aircraft collision, the airline was never short of accidents and deaths. On the 3rd of December 1995, Cameroon Airlines Flight 3701 crashed near Douala, killing 71 out of 76 people on board in what marked the worst accident in the history of the airline. These and many other incidences marked the life of the airline, which led not only to it earning a bad name, but being banned from many airports, but also it was then shut down. The current CAMAIR-CO has a history and reputation which, if it's not equal to its predecessors, is worst. With its headquarters in Douala and operating out of Douala International Airport, it is not only an airline that has never made a profit, but also it is struggling under the weight of its debts as most of its aircraft are currently grounded. Created on 11 September 2006 by a presidential decree of the country's president, Paul Biya, the characteristics of this new airline are more of a replica of those in its mother airline. First of all, just like Cameroon Airlines stopped international flights under the so-called umbrella of restructuring, on the 30th of December 2016, the airline ceased services to Paris as part of a network restructuring exercise. Secondly, this airline's current existence is still a miracle, given that it has been loss-making since its launch in 2011. CAMAIR-CO reportedly had debts about $65 billion, and the Agency for Aero Navigation Safety in Africa and Madagascar, ASECNA, had ordered the company to pay its arrears of royalties amounting to $185,000 under supervision of Air Navigation Services. CAMAIR-CO was the subject of a recovery plan proposed by the US firm Boeing Consulting in 2016, which included settlement of the outstanding debt, the injection of about $111 million, resizing of the network, and the modernization of the fleet, but the plan has not been implemented. Listening to this fact, does it ring a bell? Most definitely, as that was the same problem the mother airline had before closed down. Also, just like its predecessor, which is mostly owned by the government of Cameroon, CAMAIR-CO, with a capital of just over $185,000, was created by presidential decree, with the state of Cameroon as the sole shareholder. A look at former solely owned national companies of this country is a good indication of the direction it is headed without a thought. Besides its failing management, non-profitability, the airline has experienced a number of accidents and incidents just like its predecessor. CAMAIR-CO's aircraft, the Dija, catching fire shortly after it prepared to take off at the Simalen International Airport in Yaoundé, was just one of such accidents. Another factor indicating the unfortunate fate of CAMAIR-CO is the number of aircraft it owns and declining number of destinations. The CAMAIR-CO fleet consists only of about 6 aircraft as of August 2019, which of course are not in good condition. They include the Boeing 737-700, the Boeing 767-300AR, and the Bombardier-AQ-400, and a Siang MA-60-600. The Cameroon government is working on heavily investing in the airline, but the money values suggested as investments don't completely make the picture brighter. In the aftermath of the appointment of a new top management of state airline CAMAIR-CO, the public treasury granted an amount of about $1 million to support the implementation of development activity within the near-bankrupt company. According to sources at the Finance Ministry, CAMAIR-CO previously received the same amount on May 22, 2019, and a little more on 31st of May 2019, to pay a debt claimed from CAMAIR-CO by Ethiopian Airlines, as well as to maintain certain aircraft. Furthermore, Part of the disbursement was to rent 2 aircraft, train 2 crews on the Q400 module, and settle the fuel debts claimed by the oil operator Tradex and the airline Walia, from which CAMAIR-CO rented an aircraft throughout March 2019. Overall, the government is planning to inject a total of over $11 million to support the recovery of the public airline, but it seems the money invested is sinking to the ocean floor as no results are visibly seen. Also, all these investments are supposed to be buried, which makes it even troubling that the owner of airline is deep in debt, as well as the corporation it is running. The difficulties of the airline have accelerated to the point where nearly all of its 6 aircraft are grounded, and this adds to the crippling situation where even some domestic flights and services to other African destinations have been shut down. The consequence is a drop in turnover, which has even resulted in staff going some months without their salaries, which almost led to a strike before the government salvaged with the investment. The government hopes to leave this airline from bankruptcy and shut down, but then with the trends of things, this airline was set up for failure right from the foundation. It is still operational, but for how long is the question. Despite the appointment of a new team on board, many Cameroonians believe the new team will change little or nothing, given that they come to fill an already existing template. Highly indebted and very underperformant, with just 1 aircraft which is buried, and some reports which say they plan to lay off some 130 workers. The now former Director General, Louis-Georges Ndipendikoto, explained that cutting off nearly a third of close to 400 workers already on technical leave since June 2020 is a decision influenced by economic challenges. With the company still limping after a decade of relaunch, there have been increased calls for the airline to be privatized, a call government has failed to heed and keeps trying different hands at maintaining the body. Not even the reported loss of over $185 million in the first quarter of 2020 could do the trick. With Ayam Moger as new board chair and Colonel Jean-Christophe Elangema as general manager, the enthusiasm of many Cameroonians over the change is yet to be seen, as many have termed the development as pouring new wine in old wineskins. And who can blame them? The records are there to prove them right. There you have it, explorers. That is the reason why CAMAIR-CO is a failure. Thanks for watching this video, and if you did enjoy this video, do all to give it a thumbs up and do not forget to subscribe and share with your friends.